Hello, welcome to the Motivational Interviewing Hybrid class. My name is Mason Moore and I'll be your instructor for both the online portion of the training and for the two in-person days where we'll be joining one another here in about a week from when you're watching this video. The Motivational Interviewing class, when you do it in person, is a 3-day class. When you do it in the hybrid form, day one of those 3 days is what you're going to be completing now online. The day one component, the online component, is primarily content based. Most of what we're going to be doing together from an interactivity standpoint, from a practice standpoint, we're going to be doing once we gather together in the classroom. So really the point of this online section is to introduce you to the content, familiarize you with some of the basic concepts around motivational interviewing, and make sure that you have a foundation so that when we step into the in-person component of the class, we will do a little review when we first get there, so I don't want you to worry that you have to memorize everything or that you have to be an expert in this material. So when we begin the in-person component, we will start with a review of the material, but most of our time together is going to be spent in practice. Now, what does that practice look like? Well, I have to say a dirty word: videotaping. The motivational interviewing class requires now all students to complete 2 videotapes of you in a session with a client demonstrating the motivational interviewing skills. The old motivational interviewing class only required 1 videotape. We're now required to do 2. The first of those videotapes is practice. The second of those videotapes is really your final videotape, and that's the videotape that you'll be, that you'll be assessed on, not necessarily graded on, that you'll be assessed on. Now, students typically have a high amount of anxiety when it comes to the whole idea of videotaping, and I can relate to that, I can understand that, and at the same time, videotaping is a wonderful teaching tool. So if you're having concerns about the videotape component, I completely understand. We will do some work to normalize that, and the best I can do at this point is to just assure you that I feel like you're in good hands with respect to the videotape piece. If your worry is that it is only your nerves that are going to prevent you from demonstrating the skills, then I have a number of different things that we can do to make sure that we minimize the impact of any anxiety that you're having. And most of the time, by the time we get to the videotape, we've reviewed the content well enough, you have a firm enough grasp on it, that we can really use the videotape as a gentle teaching tool. This is a class, it's a CAC 2 class, so there is a higher level of expectation than the videotapes that we do during the CAC 1 class, addiction counseling skills. But that being said, you are not by any means expected to demonstrate an expert level of proficiency with these skills. This is a forum where it is okay for you to practice, okay for you to experiment, and okay for you to make mistakes. So the expectation isn't that you produce a clean, perfect tape or you don't pass the class. The expectation is that you be able to demonstrate the skills, and if you make mistakes along the way, that you learn from them. Simple as that. Really the content component, I've done a number of different online trainings, and some of you may have been a part of the cognitive behavioral therapy training that I've done online, or the infectious diseases training, and I'm still trying to find the most effective way to deliver the content. For the motivational interviewing class, there is some reading that you're going to have to do. Really, this week of online component is supposed to require 7 hours of your time. And so in those 7 hours, there will be forum posts, there are going to be some assignments that you're completing, but because the bulk of the practice work is saved for day 2 and day 3 of the class during the in-person component, A lot of what you're going to be working with during the online section is really just the content. Now, there is something new to the content. Motivational interviewing has undergone some changes in the last 3 years. They have taken away some of the terminology that you may have been familiar with previously. They have added some new conceptualized content and some new terminology. We're at a very strange place in the evolution of all of this right now as a field. Rolnick and Miller put out the 3rd edition of their motivational interviewing book, but a lot of the resources and a lot of the teaching tools that are still out there and in circulation haven't quite caught up and incorporated some of that new terminology, excuse me. So I will make sure that you're well aware of what is considered old terminology and what is the new terminology that was introduced in the 3rd edition of the motivational interviewing text. I'm going to briefly highlight some of that for you now, and then I'm going to shut this process down and let you get rolling. The first change that you're going to see is about how they chose to define motivational interviewing. They went from 1 definition to now 3 definitions. There's a layperson's definition, a practitioner's definition, and a technical definition. Now, how they thought that was simplifying things, I don't know. But you'll be introduced to all 3 of those definitions. They made some changes to what we call motivational interviewing spirit, or the spirit of motivational interviewing, that used to be characterized by 3 things. It's evocative, it's collaborative, and it respects a client's autonomy. They've added to that idea now a 4th component. And that 4th component is compassion. So we're going to be talking in person a great deal about what that means to have compassion during the clinical process. We also have moved away, and this is pretty well known now in the field, from the phase 1, phase 2 model of motivational interviewing, and have now gone to the 4-process model. That begins with the idea of engagement between the client and the therapist, then a process of focusing where we are defining goals and establishing a mutually agreed upon direction for the course of care, then moving to evoking, where we are asking questions about how we are going to do this and listening to our clients about the arguments that they're making against change, and helping to do some of that internal work where we're calling out that which is within the client around their ambivalence around making changes before moving into the 4th process, which is planning. And this is where we really look at the how and when questions of the motivational interviewing process. One of the biggest changes that you'll see as well has to do with this concept of resistance. Motivational interviewing has removed their use of that term, and I'll admit up front, I'm resistant to the idea of them not using the word resistance. But nevertheless, you will see now the phrase sustained talk or status quo behavior to describe a client that is apparently in a place of no change, rather than the word resistance. Those are the big major changes. There are some subtle changes that were introduced as well that we'll talk about along the way. But for now, I think that sets you off on the right foot. Good luck with the online portion of the class. I look forward to meeting all of you in person. And despite what you may be thinking about the stressfulness of the videotapes, it's actually quite an enjoyable class. I do want to tell you to come to the class prepared to deliver. And what I mean by that is that this is a demanding class. 2 days of videotaping takes a lot out of you. And sometimes students will feel it at the end of that first day, where they'll go home and they'll be just completely trashed, completely tired. So I want you to come in having done the best you can to get some sleep, bring some water, wear comfortable clothes. And because we're going to be using real plays instead of role plays, which means we're not going to be up there doing some kind of skit some kind of fake scenario, you will also be, in addition to being a clinician demonstrating motivational interviewing, you will also be in the role of client. There's a third role that we work with, which is also the observer role. But the two that are the most demanding are clinician and client. And when you are the client, we're going to want you to bring something to the table that you want to change, a real issue, something that you're ambivalent about, something that you're interested in having be different in your life. Now, this shouldn't be something that's a 10 out of 10 on the difficulty scale. We want this to be appropriate for the setting. You need to feel safe enough to talk about it in front of a group of people. You need to feel comfortable enough to talk about it and have it be placed on videotape. But nevertheless, if the scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the most threatening thing you can imagine doing, and 1 being, it doesn't matter to me whatsoever, something around a 6, maybe a 7. Something that has a little bit of energy to it so that we're giving the person who's in the therapist role something to work with. So, I said that I was going to quit talking earlier, and now I mean it this time. Best of luck with the online portion of the class. I look forward to meeting you all in person. Thank you.